Wait! The caretaker's shout made a young mother freeze in the hallway, with her baby crying in her arms. Every second felt eternal. As she tried to grasp the danger looming over them, only the attention of an elderly man could save both their lives. An ordinary morning would turn into a test of courage, fear, and gratitude, reminding us that sometimes a single warning is all we need to realize the true value of life. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is the Linda's Stories channel. I hope you enjoy this story. Ella adjusted the baby in her arms for the third time in the last 5 minutes. Oliver, at 8 months old, seemed heavier each day, or perhaps her strength was just waning. She sighed, looking at the worn-out wristwatch. Another day of being late to work, another excuse to come up with. I'm sorry, Mrs. Collins, Oliver had a fever. Apologies for the delay, the bus broke down on the way. The excuses piled up just like the bills on the coffee table in the small third-floor apartment. The building, a lower middle-class housing complex, had seen better days. The peeling walls told silent stories of postponed dreams, much like Ella's tired eyes. At 26, she felt as if she carried the weight of an entire lifetime. In the elevator that had been broken for 3 weeks, Ella started the climb up the stairs. 1 step at a time, she repeated mentally. It was the mantra she used for everything in life lately. 1 bill at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 tear at a time. Little Oliver started to whimper. Shh, we're almost there, my love, Ella whispered, adjusting him on her shoulder. Mommy just needs to leave you with Beatrice to go to work. We'll be together again soon. Beatrice, a 67-year-old lady who lived upstairs, was one of the few rays of light in Ella's life. She took care of Oliver for an amount Ella could afford, although sometimes it was late and the kind lady never complained. On the 2nd floor, Ella stopped to catch her breath. Her legs ached, and she leaned against the cold wall for a moment and closed her eyes. Why is everything so hard for me, Lord? She murmured, a prayer repeated so many times that the words seemed worn out. What did I do to deserve so much struggle? The question lingered in the air of the empty hallway, unanswered as always. Ella readjusted the heavy bag on her shoulder. Diapers, a bottle, a change of clothes for Oliver. Her own lunch packed the night before when she finally managed to get the baby to sleep. Her thoughts a whirlwind of worries. The rent overdue for the 2nd time in a row. The notice from the power company threatening disconnection. The refrigerator almost empty. And Oliver needing new clothes as he was growing so fast. Everything seemed like an impossible mountain to climb. Since Kyle left, I'm not ready to be a father, Ella, were his last words. She had been facing the world alone, with no close family to help, and no shoulder to cry on except her little son's. Finally, upon reaching the 3rd floor, Ella took a deep breath. She needed to pull herself together before meeting Beatrice. The kind lady was already too worried, and Ella tried hard not to show how much she was sinking. That was when she noticed Harold, the building's janitor, in the hallway. A man in his early 60s with grey hair and hands calloused from decades of hard work. He always had a kind smile for all the residents, especially for Ella and Oliver. Good morning, Harold, said Ella, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The janitor was standing near her apartment with a strange expression on his face. Ella didn't notice immediately, her mind occupied with the never-ending list of day's concerns. She approached the door, rummaging in her purse for the keys with one hand while holding Oliver with the other. A complicated dance she had already learned to perform with some skill. She found the worn-out bunch of keys and headed to the lock. That's when Harold, who seemed to be sniffing something in the air with concentration, widened his eyes and shouted, "Wait!" The urgent tone made Ella freeze, the key inches from the lock. Oliver, startled by the shout, began to cry. Ella instinctively held him close to her chest, feeling her heart race. "What is it, Harold?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I smell gas coming from your apartment," he said, approaching cautiously. "Strong. Do not open that door, and especially do not light anything inside." Ella felt the blood chill in her veins. In the morning, exhausted after a particularly difficult night, She had heated some water for coffee. She remembered turning off the stove, but had she completely closed the gas valve? "My God," she whispered, backing away from the door as if it might explode at any moment. "I'll call the fire department immediately," said Harold, already taking the old cell phone out of his pocket. "Stay away from the door and go to the emergency corridor with the boy." Ella obeyed in a state of shock, automatically cradling Oliver while watching the caretaker call the fire department with a calmness that only decades of life experience could provide. He described the situation accurately, gave the full address, and hung up. "They will be here in a few minutes. I already evacuated the 3rd floor while doing my morning rounds. I smelled it and was investigating when you arrived," he explained. "It was God who delayed you today, Mrs. Ella." The mention of God made Ella feel a wave of emotion rising in her throat. That morning she had felt abandoned, forgotten. She had complained about the delay, the difficult life, the loneliness. And now... "I could have..." The words died in her throat. "But it didn't happen." Harold placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You and the little one are fine. That's what matters." The next few minutes felt like hours. Ella remained silent, rocking Oliver mechanically, while her mind envisioned what might have happened. A simple click of the light switch upon entering the apartment. A spark. And then... The arrival of the firefighters interrupted her grim thoughts. Professional and efficient, they quickly confirmed what Harold had detected, a significant gas leak. The stove valve had been left slightly open all day, filling the small apartment with potentially lethal gas. "It was very close, ma'am," the firefighter said, after ventilating the apartment and ensuring there was no longer any danger. "If you had entered and turned on the light..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Ella knew exactly what would have happened. She and Oliver. The mere possibility made her legs weaken. Ella fell to her knees in the hallway of the building, still holding Oliver tightly against her chest. The tears she had held back for so long finally overflowed, not in a silent cry as she used to do at night so as not to wake the baby, but in deep sobs that shook her entire body. They were not just tears of fear for what might have happened, but of a sudden and overwhelming recognition. Every morning she would wake up focusing on what was missing: enough money, support, rest, hope. She rarely paused to acknowledge what she had, the most precious of all: life, her own and her son's. As she cried, she felt a calloused hand on her shoulder. Harold had crouched beside her, his wrinkled face showing silent compassion. "It's all right to cry, Miss Ella," he said gently. "Everything will be okay." Ella raised her wet face and looked at the janitor as if seeing him for the first time. He wasn't just the man who swept the stairs and fixed leaks. At that moment, to Ella, he represented something much greater: a guardian, a protector placed in her path to prevent a tragedy. "You saved our lives," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "How can I ever thank you?" Harold smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. "Live, Ella. Live with gratitude. It's the best thanks." In the days that followed, something changed profoundly within her. The problems didn't magically disappear. The bills kept coming, money was still tight, and nights with Oliver were still exhausting. But her perspective had completely transformed. Each morning, upon waking to Oliver's little toothless smile, she found a moment to express gratitude. She was thankful for the air in her lungs, for the warmth of her son's body against hers, for the chance to witness another sunrise, for the opportunity to try once more. Small acts of kindness began to appear in her life, as if the universe was responding to her newfound gratitude. Mrs. Collins, her boss at the diner where she worked as a waitress, offered her a small raise. Beatrice insisted on taking care of Oliver for a few extra hours so that Ella could take an evening management course at the community centre in the neighbourhood. And Harold, the angel disguised as a janitor, began occasionally leaving a bag of fresh fruit or a package of diapers at Ella's door, always disappearing before she could thank him in person. A week after the incident, Ella sat at the worn-out table of her small kitchen after putting Oliver to sleep. She took a piece of paper and a pen and began to write, the words flowing directly from her heart. She addressed it to God, kept it in a small box, for when things were difficult, she would read it. It wasn't a long or elaborate letter, but it carried the sincerity of someone transformed by the edge of the abyss. God, you not only protected my family that day, you showed me that even when I complain and feel abandoned, I am never alone. I am more blessed than I realize. I spent so much time looking at what is missing that I fail to see the greatest wealth, being alive to raise my son, to breathe, to try, to start over each day. Thank you for reminding me of the value of life. With eternal gratitude. Ella and Oliver. That same afternoon, upon returning from work, Ella found Harold sweeping the stairs. He smiled when he saw her. No words were necessary between them, just a look of mutual recognition, of souls that understood a fundamental truth. As she climbed the stairs with Oliver in her arms, Ella stopped at the landing and looked out the hallway window. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was the same sun she had seen thousands of times before, the same view as always. But now, her eyes saw the beauty that had always been there. "Look, Oliver," she whispered to her son, who was curiously watching the vibrant colours. "Isn't it beautiful? This is our world, and we are here to see it together." Oliver babbled and smiled, reaching for the window glass with his chubby little hand. That night, instead of her usual prayer questioning the hardships of life, Ella closed her eyes and simply said, "Thank you for another day. Thank you for the chance to try again tomorrow." The difficulties were still there, waiting to be faced. But now, Ella carried within her a renewed strength, born not from the absence of problems, but from the presence of gratitude. A gratitude that began with the simple and precious act of breathing, of being alive to feel, both the pains and the joys that life had to offer. And it all started with a single word of warning, uttered at the exact moment by an attentive janitor. "Wait." Sometimes it is just what we need to hear to realize that we already have everything that truly matters. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.